On an unsure date in 1992, an angry mob storms Adrian Veidt's building, tipping over police cars and overrunning the helpless riot police. As the riot continues, a narrator explains that God has turned his back on the world and left, and because of this the world has gone to hell and old wounds are starting to open again. As the protesters smash their way into the building, a news reporter talks of a hostage situation in the White House involving the Vice President and the collapse of the European Union. Adrian Veidt, otherwise known as Ozymandias, has also been outed as the man responsible for the 3 million deaths in 1985, and is currently being hunted by the authorities. While the protesters trash Veidt's office, a special operations team breach Karnak, Ozymandias' frozen hideout, only to find it abandoned, save for the various news channels proclaiming that the national news network will be taking over. Deeper in the hideout, they discover an X-ray of a skull, one with a bright tumor-like growth growing inside of it. With the national news network activating, the reporter says that Russia has invaded Poland, and because of it, nuclear war is imminent. Inside a prison, all hell is breaking loose thanks to the news as guards try and leave. One is caught by a prisoner who demands the keys before someone else knocks the guard unconscious. Picking up the keys, Rorschach asks if the prisoner still wants out, to which the prisoner clearly says no. As Rorschach walks away, it is revealed he is the narrator, who is now complaining of an empty stomach. Heading to high security, Rorschach talks about his ruined pancake breakfast that morning and how he has never been lucky. Heading to cell 31, the masked vigilante opens the door as America and Russia prepare to launch their prospective nuclear weapons. Inside the cell, Rorschach finds Erica Manson, the marionette. Erica doesn't believe Rorschach to be the real one, since the last time they met he threatened to throw her down an elevator shaft. Rorschach reveals that he isn't Walter Kovacs, but someone entirely different from him. Rorschach hands Erica an envelope which contains pictures of her son, who is being held hostage until Erica helps with a job with Rorschach. Angered, she demands to know where her son is, but Rorschach says only his partner knows and that they need to hurry as time is running short. Erica says that she isn't going anywhere without her husband Marcos. Elsewhere in the prison, Marcos is being beaten by some other freed inmates. Erica arrives, telling her husband to stop performing. Marco suddenly turns into an experienced fighter, killing all of the inmates with a grin on his face. Rorschach tells them they need to move since now they only have 3 hours left and reunions can wait. But Erica says Marcos isn't leaving without his special weapons. Going to a set of lockers, Rorschach is perplexed that Marcos is taking imaginary weapons from the vaults, saying the killer definitely has something wrong with him. Leaving the prison, they head to Rorschach's car/home and head into the city, which is being totally evacuated by the government. Going into the sewers, Marcos pulls one of his imaginary guns on Rorschach, who isn't amused by the maniac's antics. Heading deeper into the sewers, they arrive at a secret door, which once knocked on once opens up into Night Owl's old underground hideout. Erica wonders that if the rumors of Rorschach killing Night Owl and Silk Spectre are true, but the masked vigilante says they aren't, making Erica wonder if he is partnered with Night Owl. A voice tells them that they are wrong, and Ozymandias arrives, saying Rorschach is actually working for him. Erica demands to know where her son is, and Adrian says that she will get her son and more as long as she participates in his plan. Adrian also lets slip that Rorschach isn't really bound by any type of principles like the old one was, so their threats are ill-advised. As Adrian tries to explain his plan to them, he is overcome by the cancer he has, saying it is a reminder of his mistakes. Telling the others that his dreams have died, there is only one man with the power to save the world, Dr. Manhattan, and he is going to leave this galaxy to find John. Across the multiverse, Clark Kent and Lois Lane sleep soundly in the Metropolis apartment they now own. Clark begins to dream about his prom night and how he went alone thanks to Lana Lang going with Pete Ross. Pa Kent notices his son is upset, telling him that one day he'll be able to share his secret with the world and with others, and he can't wait for that. Clark leaves the car to go to the dance, and as Ma and Pa Kent talk about Clark and how they wish they could help him or maybe give him a brother or sister, their car is slammed into by a truck, causing them to flip into a tree and kill the both of them on impact. Clark awakens from the nightmare to his wife's calls, learning that he was screaming so loud the building was shaking. Clark tells her that he has had a nightmare and that he doesn't think he has ever had one before. Dumping out a box of their old costumes, Mime and Marionette talk about the old woman who would make villains their costumes, aptly named the tailor's wife. While they talk about their story, Adrian fixes the owl ship. The two psychopaths get dressed, donning their costumes, and Rorschach isn't amused in Adrian humouring them with their costumes. But Adrian says that they are all considered criminals now, but if they find Manhattan and they convince him to come back and save the world, then maybe they can be heroes again. Mime and Marionette remember one of their countless robberies, this time of a bank, where they get the hostages to turn on one another. While dealing with the bank manager, Dr. Manhattan arrives, but before he can blast Mime into a gore puddle, Marionette steps in, allowing John to hear her unborn baby's heart beating, causing him to not attack either of the villains, instead leaving them for the police. In the present, Adrian says that he is using the two villains for that very reason, because Manhattan spared them, and that maybe he could use them to convince him to return. The 4 hours they had run out, and the world's superpowers launched their nukes, prompting Adrian to fire up the owl ship. Adrian begins powering up one of the ship's systems, which he built around Manhattan's own intrinsic field, allowing them to follow John's own quantum fingerprints to where he has disappeared to. The bombs drop, obliterating the people in the streets as their field system does not respond. The blast begins to reach them and their system activates, however they are rocked by the quantum space and are all knocked unconscious. On Prime Earth, Bruce Wayne is subject to a Rorschach test, but isn't taking it seriously, instead wanting the doctor just to sign him off. Leaving the office, he tells Lucius Fox that he won't be doing those tests again, but Lucius reminds him that the board need him to undergo annual tests now, thanks to the incident a few years back. Bruce isn't concerned with his mental health, rather the Mad Hatter that has been let loose on Gotham. Again, Lucius reminds him to be careful since LexCorp is moving in on his erratic behaviour and it could give the board enough to sell Wayne Enterprises to Luthor. Bruce says that Gotham needs Batman now more than ever, but Lucius isn't too sure, seeing as they are protesting Batman in the streets ever since the Superman theory emerged. As Lucius says the bat symbol has become a disease on the city, the owl ship comes crashing down into Gotham, landing in an abandoned fairgrounds. Waking on the ship, Rorschach learns that they have made it to the universe Manhattan is in, and now it is up to him to find him. Seeing that Mime and Marionette are out cold, Adrian cuffs them to the hole. Marionette awakes, saying that they had an agreement, but Adrian says that they need to stay on the ship until he and Rorschach have found John. Heading into Gotham City, Adrian and Rorschach are startled at how different, yet the same, this world is to theirs. Heading to the public library, they scan through the world's history, and they think that Manhattan may very well be one of the millions of masked heroes in the world. Adrian identifies two of the smartest men on the planet, Bruce Wayne and Lex Luthor, who they plan on approaching with their story in a hope that they will aid them. Deciding to split up, Adrian intends to meet with Lex while Rorschach goes to see Bruce Wayne. Heading to Wayne Manor, Rorschach breaks in, and in the process eats Bruce's breakfast left for him by Alfred. Eventually, Rorschach finds his way into the Batcave, and while stopping some criminals, Batman is alerted to a break-in at the cave. At LexCorp, Lex finds Adrian waiting for him in his office. Adrian introduces himself as the smartest man on his Earth, but Luthor isn't interested, giving Adrian only seconds before security arrives. As Mime and Marionette free themselves from their cuffs, Rorschach descends into the Batcave as Luther laughs off Adrian's story, saying he doesn't know how the smartest man in the world thought murdering 3 million people would solve world peace. As Adrian continues to try and convince Lex to aid him, someone tries to shoot him in the back, but thanks to his speed and agility he is able to dodge the bullet, which instead hits Lex. As Rorschach is confronted by Batman, Adrian confronts the gunman, who is revealed to be none other than the comedian, who says that this time he isn't drunk and this time he is ready for him. Witnessing his own death at the hands of Adrian Veidt, Eddie Blake, the comedian, suddenly reawakens in Hobbs River off the coast of Metropolis, where Dr. Manhattan has brought him. In the present, the comedian fights Adrian as Lex lies bleeding out on the floor of his office. Eddie finds Adrian's look of surprise hilarious, and he says it would be poetic to throw him through the strong glass behind him. But before he can, Adrian activates Lex's lighting panel, darkening the room. Adrian attacks the unfazed Eddie, demanding to know how Manhattan is here and what he is doing on the world. Eddie has enough and pulls his guns, shooting at Veidt, who dodges all of the bullets and dives out of a broken window, falling from the LexCorp building and down into the street below, injuring himself in the process. In the Batcave, Batman confronts a trespassing Rorschach. Rorschach says that he is not an enemy and came to Bruce for help. Batman is perplexed by the man, who eventually finds and hands him Korvac's journal, which he hopes Batman will read and hopes it will explain everything. In the Gotham amusement park, Mime and Marionette free themselves and begin to try to learn where they are, since Adrian clearly had no idea and they're definitely not in Jersey. Marionette says that she never should have joined until they saw what had happened to their son. Surveying Gotham, they realize they definitely aren't in Jersey. In the Batcave, Batman reads through the journal, and realizing that Rorschach is eagerly waiting over him, he tells him to head into the mansion and get some rest. Elsewhere in an old folks' home, some of the residents talk about the recent Superman theory and how the heroes they knew were real people and had real names like Teddy Roosevelt. In the home, Johnny Thunder waits for his granddaughter and her son to take him out for dinner. On the TV, more heroes like Rex Mason and Kirk Langstrom step forward, confirming ties to the Department of Metahuman Affairs. One of the residents changed the channel over to an old movie starring Carver Coleman in his final movie role. The movies begin as Johnny continues to wait for his family. In Wayne Manor, Rorschach is given a room by Alfred. Rorschach asks if Alfred could make any more of the pancakes he ate earlier since they were good. Removing his mask, the young man goes for a shower, and during which he feels out of place in such a nice building, but he fights through it in order to get himself clean and wash away the stink of Adrian Veidt. Going to Jumping Jack's bar, Mime and Marionette are immediately confronted by a giant of a man, who says that they cannot wear makeup in the building since the bar is owned by Joker. The bar patrons attack Marionette, but Mime kills them with his invisible guns and knives. Marionette joins in, using piano wire to slice and dice anyone in her path. In the bloody aftermath, both crazed killers have a drink, deciding to find the Joker. As Lex Luthor is taken to hospital for his gunshot wound and the world begins going crazy over the Superman theory, Johnny Thunder finds himself waiting for his family still, before disappearing as the Carver Coleman movie continues to play. Heading into the city, the young Rorschach plans on meeting his parents, but he never does as the giant alien monster Adrian unleashes destroys the city. Waking from his nightmare, Rorschach finds Bruce waiting for him. Bruce says he read the book and he knows where Manhattan is. Sneaking into Arkham Asylum, Batman says that he is inside the prison. He takes the young man into a cell before slamming the door shut, saying Rorschach belongs in the prison. Angered, Rorschach begins yelling and screaming as Batman walks away, saying he is going to kill the Batman. In Arkham, Reggie passes through the prison mess hall, yearning for his pancakes. In the food line, he is told by a man with tiger tattoos that he is his property and he will protect his property. Reggie remembers his childhood and the first time he saw the atomic bomb cloud and his parents beginning to become worried about where their country was headed. His mother wanting them to move, but his father, psychiatrist Malcolm Long, doesn't want to leave. While fighting the guards after attacking the tiger tattooed man, he remembers seeing his father on TV for the first time for his interview with Walter Kovacs. Calling his mother while he is at college, she tells Reggie not to worry about his father as Kovacs' case will make his father's career, and he's become friends with Rorschach. Soon he sees things at his college get progressively worse, so packing up his car, Reggie tries to get home to see his father and mother. But Ozymandias' plan is enacted and the city is destroyed by the giant tentacled alien. In Arkham, Reggie is strapped to a chair and met by Matthew Mason, who wants to know a little about Reggie and who he is, since none of the prison's databases have any record of who he is. Reggie remembers being rescued from his car by EMTs in the aftermath of the attack, but they have trouble keeping him in line as he and many others have gone insane from what they witnessed, resulting in him being taken into an insane asylum. It's here Reggie attacks everyone who comes into his cell until he's able to escape to the rooftop, where he finds another man, Byron Lewis, the original Mothman from the Minutemen. Byron believes he can fly, and he tells Reggie that he visualizes what he wants to see as he steps off the roof, throwing off his cloak and revealing a flying rig under it, allowing him to glide away from the prison as Reggie watches in disbelief. Back in the insane asylum, Reggie is put through the Rorschach tests, which put an extreme strain on him, but he begins to see shapes take form, like the moth, who later on he meets back in the prison rec room after being returned to the prison. Reggie still refuses to talk to Dr. Mason, instead thinking to himself how he needs to find Dr. Manhattan so he will stay in Arkham Asylum. Reggie continues seeing Byron, who goes on about how he can fly and how he does it, leading to him trying to escape for many years. As he and Byron become friends, Byron escapes one more time and brings everything from Reggie's father's office, including his notes on Walter Kovacs and his journal. One day, while they are putting together a puzzle of Ozymandias, a guard tries to take his father's mug from him, leading it to its smashing. Byron hates seeing what the boy has had to deal with, and agreeing to train him in secret and make him a fighter and an honorary member of the Minutemen. In the rec room, Byron says that they have been transferring people who survived the attack like Reggie to government facilities, and when they try and take Reggie, he fights back, stabbing one of them in the hand. In October 1992, Reggie and the others in the prison learn of Adrian Veidt's betrayal. Reggie knows he must now pay, so packing his things, he leads an escape of the asylum with Byron, who, seeing the burning building, turns to it and reveals his wings again, saying he can see it, but Reggie doesn't know what he is talking about as he walks into the fire. Escaping into the mountains, Reggie finds a letter from Byron, who hopes Reggie reaches his destination, and he calls him a friend. He also gives him Rorschach's mask. Making his way to the Antarctic, he finds Adrian's ice palace, where he tries to kill him, but Adrian tells him about his illness that is killing him. Reggie attacks him, saying that he killed many people in that city, but Adrian says that he is sorry and that he saw the light too late to stop it, which causes Reggie to break down crying and Adrian to console him. Gearing up, Adrian says that they can still save the world together. In the present, Matthew Mason is revealed to be the Batman, who says that Reggie has escaped Arkham and is told by Alfred that they shouldn't have left him alone in Arkham with what he knew. As the guards try and catch him, a mosquito is blown up by a blue light, forming the symbol of Dr. Manhattan. Adrian Veidt, meanwhile, is taken to hospital for his near-death encounter with a comedian in Lex Luthor's offices. After the police and the doctors are finished with him, Adrian awakens to find himself handcuffed to the bed. The cops outside rush in after hearing his heart monitor flatline, but it's all a ruse by Adrian to lure them inside so he can escape. And escape he does, as he takes one of the officers hostage and escapes with his cat and costume. At the Daily Planet, Lois fights with Perry over a headline she never wrote. Clark knows there is more important things to worry about as the Superman theory is gaining more and more traction around the world, leading to Russia closing its borders from people, metahuman and human alike. In Gotham, Saturn Girl and Rorschach stop to change into their costumes. Rorschach says that they need to find Manhattan, and the crazy woman suggests that they use a really big light to get his attention. As Mr. Thunder is revealed to have escaped his confines at the old folks' home and boards a bus to Pittsburgh, Adrian returns to the Owl ship, only to find Batman waiting for him and wanting answers. Comedian, meanwhile, is hot on the heels of Marionette and Mime, who are busy killing some of Joker's gang in order to get the Joker himself. Batman and Adrian meanwhile have to escape from the police in the Owl ship as they hear about protesters calling for Batman's arrest marching into Gotham Police Headquarters. In Gotham, the streets are utter chaos as the protesters begin rioting through the streets. Adrian and Batman's ideologies clash as they talk about each other's wrongdoings, with Adrian saying Batman and his friends are basically playing a game of tag with villains while the world falls apart around them, and they're the reason this is happening. In Metropolis, Lois visits a recovering Lex, wanting to know what he has to do with the Superman theory. Lex says that he is not behind it, but Lois knows better, given his history with Superman. He does however say that he knows a little about it and will team up with her to expose the truth. Superman listens in as Lex reveals the person who created all these metahumans for the government is a metahuman themselves, and at one point was part of the Justice League. Mr. Thunder meanwhile heads to an abandoned building in Pittsburgh, where he is accosted by a group of thugs. While trying to outrun a police chopper, Adrian wonders if Manhattan came to this world because it seems to cling to old pulp heroes so much. As the Owl ship begins to crash, Batman falls from it and into the angry crowd that wants his head. As he is beaten mercilessly by the crowd, Mr. Thunder meanwhile finds a Green Lantern and is saved by Rorschach and Saturn Girl from the thugs. Back in Gotham, Mime and Marionette finally find the Joker, who is also brought the beaten body of Batman, as Rorschach asks what a Green Lantern is. The tragic and warped origins of Marionette and Mime unfold as Marionette and Mime are taken by the Joker, who is also in possession of a beaten and bloody and paralyzed Batman, to an underground meeting. They happen upon a group of Mr. Freeze's thugs, who after Joker offers, join him and his crew. This however comes at a price, as Shaky the tattoo artist goes to work on them. Marionette remembers more about her past and how her father ran a marionette shop. Across from the shop, a new glass shop opens and she wants to go over and say hello to the boy sitting in the window. Using her puppets to wave at the boy, he comes over to the shop and without saying a word, Erica shows Marcos around. While Shaky gets to work on the new recruits, Mime and Marionette attack the Joker's crew, killing them as the Joker also begins to join in, much to the shock of his new crew and Shaky. While Erica is bullied by fellow school children for playing with dolls and Marcos comes to her aid, the two villains accompany Joker into his underground meeting, where every major villain is awaiting. Riddler leads the meeting, asking them all if it's safe to operate anymore, and the villains agree that it's not, and places like the Sanctuary have messed up things even further. Some say that they should, like heroes seemingly are, retreat, and they should all head to Kahndaq. Others think that that's a bad idea, but Dr. Sivana reminds them that Kahndaq is the answer to their problems. Talk turns to Typhoon's powers and how he got them, and the villain says that he isn't some government puppet like Edward is implying. It doesn't matter since Joker arrives and introduces Mime and Marionette. Marionette's past comes back as her father talks with her and Marcos about his love for puppets. Some police officers arrive and seeing Marcos tell him his mother had a bad fall, making the boy run off back to the glass shop. The officers turn their attention to Erica's father and he gives them a specific puppet, making them leave and say they'll come back the next day. In the present, the villains all want to find out who is under the Batman cowl this time, but while they argue, Typhoon is killed by the comedian who has arrived and begins opening fire and trying to kill Mime and Marionette. Giganta attacks him but doesn't stop him from shooting Mr. Freeze and blowing a hole in Riddler's leg. As he fights the villains, Joker throws a grenade into the mix, blowing up the entire room, allowing him, Mime and Marionette to escape. In the past, the cops come back to Erica's father's shop and beat him for not wanting to participate in their illicit dealings anymore. The cops find Erica and use her to get her father to tell her where their payoff is, saying it is in the Night Owl puppet. Later, Erica comes across Marcos and says that she needs to try and help her father, and she needs Marcos to say something if he can, but he remains silent. Returning to the shop, Erica finds that her father has hung himself, leaving her a note that tells her to take all his money and run. She doesn't, however, instead killing the cops who come around looking for more protection money. Marcos helps her murder the cops and both of them escape and become Mime and Marionette. Safely away from the battle, the older Mime wants to return to the fight and lure the comedian away, but Erica tells him that they are together in this and the only one she wants is him, and she can't lose him. Spending the night together, they soon are woken by the comedian who wants to know where Ozymandias is. Blake is shocked by the Joker, who zaps him with a joy buzzer from behind, taking his smiley face pin while Erica wonders if the comedian might know where Dr. Manhattan is. Dr. Manhattan meanwhile recounts the changing history of the universe, starting with killing Alan Scott and the first 3 times the lantern's flame burned green. Rorschach, Johnny and Saturn Girl meanwhile learn that the lantern will help them find Manhattan. Johnny tries to use his powers, but learns that they don't work as Adrian Veidt arrives in the Owl ship. On the ship, the team watch the news coverage on the Superman theory and the amount of trouble it's causing within the superhero and world communities. Saturn Girl says everything will be fine, and she reveals that she is from the future. Imra says that Superman is the reason she is part of the Legion of Superheroes, and she was sent back in time to cleanse some unknown anomaly that threatens his life. Adrian's brain cancer begins to hurt him again, and Reggie tells him not to give up. Bubastis soon alerts them to Manhattan being close, and Adrian reveals that he cloned the cat from the remains of the one Manhattan killed, meaning the new Bubastis has been imbued with a sliver of his power, and thanks to Johnny, Imra and the Lantern, they now have a way of tracking the energy, and Adrian finds it fascinating that Reggie found 2 people touched by Manhattan. They soon see footage of the comedian on the news, who meanwhile is in the company of the Joker, Mime, Marionette and an unconscious Batman. Joker welcomes them to his funhouse as Eddie wonders how Adrian roped the 2 villains into his plan. Marionette uses a drill to torture Eddie, wanting to know where Manhattan is, but he has no idea when or where Manhattan is, since all John asks him to do was take out Adrian. Soon Mime alerts them to Batman getting free from his bonds, attacking the group before disappearing into a smoke pellet he's deployed. Bubastis meanwhile tracks Manhattan to the Joker's funhouse, where Adrian lands the ship, telling Johnny and Imra to stay on the ship as he and Reggie leave with the Lantern. Batman meanwhile is almost killed by Marionette, until Joker breaks up the fight with a flamethrower. Rorschach and Adrian arrive and Batman says that he was wrong about Reggie. Adrian agrees with him and says that he's been wrong about a lot of things lately. Bubastis begins glowing and Adrian moves her closer to the lantern, causing it to feed on John's energy. As the energy crackles around the room, Adrian demands Dr. Manhattan show himself, and he does, arriving in a flash of light. Not wasting any time, John separates the group away from Batman and Joker, teleporting them with him as Adrian says that he just wants to talk, telling John that he needs his help to save their world. John says that he isn't going back to their world since he is in the middle of something on this one. John knows, however, that Adrian tried to bring Laurie with him, but she refused, instead leading him to Mime and Marionette, who Manhattan remembers, telling Erica about her child and how he didn't kill her in the robbery because of what her child would become. She also learns from him that she is pregnant again. Reggie tries to plead with Manhattan, telling him Adrian has cancer and he is a changed man, but John reveals that Adrian doesn't have any cancer. Reggie becomes angered with Adrian, demanding to know if Manhattan is telling the truth, and learns that he is, and Adrian does not have cancer, only he lied to Rorschach to get his help. Adrian says that Reggie sees what he wants to see, which is why he didn't realize that Walter Kovacs was never a friend of his father's and actually drove his father mad, something Reggie didn't know about thanks to Byron Lewis, a friend of his father's, hiding most of the research notes from Reggie. Because of this, his parents were separated and they died despising one another and not in an embrace like he thought they would have. Manhattan teleports them again, overlooking a riot outside Washington DC over the Superman theory, where John says that he thought he could find hope here, but soon looked ahead in time and saw the most hopeful being among the people heading for him, now hopeless. Again, they teleport into a cinema playing Carver Coleman's new film, where Manhattan says that the actor Carver was once full of hope as well, but that soon ended, as does everything else. John returns the team back to Batman and Joker in the warehouse, where Adrian tries to recall John as Reggie grabs him, making Adrian wonder why he's still wearing the mask of the man who destroyed his father. Joker attacks Batman as Reggie beats Adrian, who is beaten until Joker tries to stop him, leading to Reggie beating Joker's head in as well and ripping off his mask, saying Rorschach is now dead. The injured Adrian makes it back to the ship, where he attacks Imra and Johnny before saying that he can save everything and everybody everybody because he has a plan. As Reggie escapes the funhouse and people talk about the Creeper, Batman retrieves Rorschach's mask and Manhattan arrives on Mars, where again he sees Superman running at him, his eyes burning with the anger before seeing nothing, making him wonder that if in a month from now, Superman will destroy him, or he will destroy everything. Clark and Lois, meanwhile, investigate Lois's desk, which the reporter believes has been trashed by someone looking for something. Clark doesn't think so, but soon Perry arrives to look for Lois's latest story on the world's metahumans being mostly American. As Lois gets back to work, the news reports of Firestorm illegally entering Russia and attacking the Russian hero team, the People's Heroes. Clark knows that Ronnie is known for his temper, as Perry wants to know who is up for a trip to Moscow, prompting Lois and Clark to volunteer. Firestorm meanwhile battles the People's Heroes, who try and keep him away from the protesting people. Ronnie, however, is thrown into the crowd when his powers deactivate, severing his connection with Professor Stein momentarily. As the people rush him, Ronnie begins to panic and his powers explode, turning everyone around him into glass. Ronnie panics and escapes as Clark watches from Metropolis, racing off to deal with the situation. Superman, however, heads to Kandak, where he meets with Black Adam. Adam shows Superman around the city, showcasing how it has become a safe place for metahumans like Sandstorm, who is a small child who helped free thousands of child slaves. Superman says that he only wants to talk with Firestorm, whom Superman assumed fled to Kandak from Russia, but learns that he hasn't. Talk turns to the Superman theory and how things must change. Adam then threatens Superman, who wants to know what makes him different from Superman, who can just take justice into his own hands and cross borders. Superman says that he's authorized to do that and he doesn't kill people like Adam does. Before Superman leaves, Adam tells him to let Firestorm know that he's welcome in Kandak and will be safe. Lois meanwhile unwraps a package she was sent by Rorschach, containing a USB that has footage of the Justice Society of America, an old superhero team she has never even heard of. Superman heads to Russia, where he finds Firestorm hiding out in an old nuclear plant, trying to turn a small child back into normal from the glass Ronnie accidentally turned him into. Superman consoles Ronnie, telling the boy that he can change the child back to normal and he will stay with him until it happens. Firestorm gives it another try, pouring in all of his energy into a blinding light. As the light fades, Superman discovers that the child has been returned to normal. Hugging the child, Superman reassures Firestorm that he is okay. Back at the site of the Firestorm fight, President Putin issues a statement directed at America, telling them that Russia has amassed its own metahuman army in the wake of America breaking their deals with the country to stop producing weaponry capable of annihilating the planet. Superman arrives, saying that he is there to help, and taking the podium, he tells everyone what Firestorm did was an accident, and it's one that can be undone. While his speech continues, Batman races towards Russia, trying to contact Superman and get him to stop talking. However, Superman says demonizing any group of people like metahumans is wrong, and Firestorm isn't the villain and can help. Putin has had enough of Superman's speech, telling him there is proof that Firestorm is an American agent. Soon Firestorm arrives, but before he can reveal he has changed the child back, the military open fire on him, causing Superman to race in and protect the child from the gunfire. In the chaos, a group of the Glass people are killed, and it causes the People's Heroes to try and stop Superman as Pozhar goes after Firestorm. More people are crushed by a tank that Superman soon stops. Firestorm begins to panic again, saying he can fix the broken people now. He begins to burn up as Batman reaches Red Square, telling Superman that it's not Firestorm. It's too late, however, as Firestorm explodes in a bright blue light, causing Batman to crash, and Ozymandias, watching from his hideout, knows it has begun. Elsewhere, Dr. Manhattan collects a Legion ring, which has been hurled through time when its user was killed, saving Earth's sun in the far future. As John travels through time to multiple points throughout the years, he can still see that in 1 week he will stand on Mars facing Superman, not knowing, wondering if the Man of Steel kills him or if he destroys everything. Meanwhile, all of Earth's heroes race towards Mars thanks to the recent tachyon explosion in Russia being tracked back there. Because of the tachyon explosion, the past, present and future to John is hazy and he cannot see things properly. Russia, Hawkman and Hal Jordan find the seriously injured Superman in the rubble, having been blasted by what everyone assumed was Firestorm. Firestorm. The world reacts to the news, turning on Superman and Firestorm and marching on the Hall of Justice, where Lois rushes to her husband's side. As the president is tasked with going against Superman, riots erupt around the world, and Wonder Woman, who retreated to Themyscira, reports that she will address the United Nations soon. At Wayne Manor, Bruce awakens from his injuries and asks Alfred what has happened to Firestorm. Ronnie meanwhile awakens, finding that he is separated from Dr. Stein, who he asks about what happened. He learns that they were framed again, much like how they were framed for the Superman theory, only this time it's much worse since they were framed for an explosion. Ronnie thinks that they are in the Hall of Justice, but learns that they are on one of the ships heading towards Mars. Bruce meanwhile heads to the Batcave, where Alfred tells him about the League tracking the explosion that tried to kill Superman to Mars, and they have all gone to contain the threat, but Bruce knows that they are being played. As Bruce tries to get a message to them, the ships land on Mars. The Lanterns all file out and check Manhattan's checkerboard, as well as his photograph they found nearby. Hal scans the surroundings and finds a structure nearby, and as they look for it, Stein confronts the heroes about taking him and Ronnie against their will. As Bruce messages race towards Mars and the Lanterns find the superstructure, Lois is met by Lex, who makes it known that he isn't there to kill Superman. Ronnie wants to do something about Manhattan, but Stein wants to go home, forcing Stein to rejoin with him. However, Ronnie helps the Lanterns seal Mars and create an atmosphere. All of the heroes confront Manhattan at his structure, demanding to know who he is. As Manhunter tries to talk to him, Manhattan says that he is talking to the future Ronnie, thanks to the Tachyons messing everything up for him. Guy is sick of waiting, telling Manhattan that they have fought stronger villains and won, but Manhunter stops him, and that he knows that Manhattan is confused about what's happening. The Blue Being says that he is confused for the moment, and knows that Manhunter will learn his final vision of Superman, thanks to it being inside his head. Supergirl knows Manhattan thinks Superman is a threat, and will eventually try to kill Manhattan, so Manhattan tried to kill Superman first. Things escalate, leading to Guy actually hitting and killing Manhattan with one punch. He doesn't die, however, teleporting away, but instantly returning to take Guy's ring, curious about the emotional power it has running through it and how it works. Destroying the ring causes the magical users of the group to unleash their power on him. Again, Manhattan is curious at all of the heroes and what they call magic, finding wonder in their power as he harnesses it, using it against them to blast them back. Lois meanwhile learns Lex comes in peace and wants to work with her. Lois still doesn't believe him, and while Lex is happy that Superman is injured, he is indeed there to help, giving Lois his gun, which she points at him almost immediately. Lex reveals that he was the one who sent her the video of the JLA, and it's proof of Manhattan's various victims, another one being Wally West. As Manhattan takes down the heroes, Bruce plans on heading to Mars, learning on TV of Diana's United Nations speech. Manhattan blasts Firestorm, taking Ronnie with him into the past, 7 years ago, just before he got his powers. In the nuclear reactor, Ronnie learns that Stein was indeed part of the government metahuman team that formed the Superman theory, and intended to fuse with Ronnie to create a new metahuman to study. Firestorm refuses to believe what he has seen, but Manhattan did it to prove that even hope decays. The heroes continue to pour on the fire, and Captain Atom goes nuclear on Manhattan, destroying his body. Wonder Woman takes the stage at the United Nations, addressing the world about the Superman theory and the fear that is spreading through it. Batman's message meanwhile fails to reach Mars, where Manhattan begins to reform, obliterating all of the heroes once and for all as Black Adam attacks the United Nations, knowing none of the heroes are on Earth to defend it. In the past, Nathaniel Dusk is left at the mercy of one of his police friends, and Joyce Guilio, the love of his life, who turned on him when he discovered she was trying to take over her mob boss husband's business. Nathaniel asks if she ever loved him, but then Carver Coleman forgets his line, and the director calls cut on the scene for the 13th time that day. John has been watching Carver's life and how over the course of a few months he is soon found murdered, but he feels nothing from this. On June 8th, 1954, Carver knows he needs to finish the scene, and hours later drowns his sorrows in the bar, where his greedy mother meets him. He isn't interested in what his mother has to say and leaves, as 4 hours prior he finally gets the entire movie scene done. John wonders if nothing lasts forever, as on November 2nd, 1985, 1945, he enters the multiverse, heading to April 18th, 1938, where he is at the dawn of Superman's world for some unknown reason, and the first person he meets is Carver Coleman. John looks over Carver's early career, and as a policeman comes to rile the now homeless man from the streets, Dr. Manhattan arrives, killing the police. Carver's first instinct is to check if the cops are still alive, which John notices, meaning this world is different, and wonders why he was drawn to this particular world. He sees himself on Mars later on, where John currently stops Hal Jordan from contacting the Green Lantern Corps, saying he needs all of the superhumans incapacitated and all will become clear soon. Carver meets John and the two go to a diner where John finds he cannot look into the future, but soon focusing on Carver he can see what is to become of the famous actor in 1 year. Carver thinks John is his guardian angel, as John's powers begin to adjust to the universe, and he sees Carver further into the future until 1955, 1 year after Carver's death, where he sits alone in the diner. John tells Carver that in 8 months he will be cast in the role of his life, but soon becomes distracted as he hears news of a man in Metropolis lifting a car. John immediately leaves as news of Superman travels across America. Arriving in Metropolis, he finds the gangster's car Superman wrecks, but soon the car, the crowd, and Superman disappear from this world, since they never were there, and the world has changed. John knows this is all part of what the heroes of this Earth call the multiverse, and the Prime Earth is at its center, and the world was introduced to Superman in 1938, and with him came the birth of the superhumans, as in 1940, Alan Scott grabs the Green Lantern, Jay Garrick becomes the Flash, Carter Hall learns about his life, Al Pratt begins his training, Kent Nelson discovers a golden helmet, Wesley Dodds dons a gas mask, Jim Corrigan is killed, and Rex Tyler invents a strength pill. A year later, the Justice Society of America is formed, and they talk about needing Superman in their group thanks to all the good he does, and they are currently waiting for him to arrive. The heroes all take their inspiration from him as Johnny Thunder sets up for a photo. Johnny summons his Thunderbolt to get Superman, but the timeline is reset, so Superman is never made a member of the JSA, and none of the heroes ever hear of him. In 1948, John meets with Carver, who he asks if he has ever heard of Superman, but the actor has not. John leaves, heading for the Kent farm, where he watches Kal-El's rocket touch down and Jonathan and Martha Kent find him, but then his arrival is shifted forward to 1986, and then again shifted forward, and then again shifted forward. After learning of what he is, Clark runs into the cornfields, and John continues to watch as Pa Kent finds him, telling the confused Clark that he is his son. Jumping again, John watches the Kents pass away in 1956, where Pa Kent's dying words to Clark tell him to use his powers for good, and use them for the betterment of law and order. Again in 1986, the Kents are alive, and help Clark make his costume. Then years later, Pa Kent dies again in the arms of his son. John thinks he is misinterpreting things, and looks to the future, following Superman's trial of influence, finding that even thousands of years from then, the Legion of Superheroes are still influenced by Superman, as Superboy is told of his mission by the Legion. John realizes that the universe is much more than it appears, and it's all connected to Superman, but he doesn't know why, since forces like Anti-Monitor have shifted Superman's timeline before, and target the hope that he embodies in an effort to redefine him. Growing curious, John reshapes the universe again, erasing Superman's past, Alan Scott, and other things to shift the universe, which he learns isn't part of the multiverse as others believe, but stands apart as a metaverse in a constant state of change. Changing Superman's origin again, he kills the Kents in a car crash when Clark is a teenager, and without his parents' guidance, Clark becomes more distant from humanity, and John begins to understand him better and relate to him more. So much so, changing things becomes intoxicating to him, which when he changes the metaverse, begins garnering the attention of others, like Wally West, who knows what Manhattan did. Because of this, he resets the metaverse, but it's too late as it's turned against him, and he sees Superman coming to destroy him, or maybe he destroys the metaverse. Carver is there also, asking if John is okay, but Manhattan doesn't know. He does know, however, that Carver will be killed in seconds by his mother, and the killing is never solved, thanks to the letter that he had detailing everything being burned. In the present, John knows he used Carver to help him find balance in the metaverse, only to see his mother kill him. As he travels through all of the death and destruction he has seen in his world and this one, he becomes a being of inaction. As the man of action, Superman awakens from his coma, setting them both on a collision course with one another, as Dr. Manhattan knows that in this universe of hope, he has become a villain. Back on Earth, the president gives the order to launch the nukes, as Batman Batman stops the soldiers from firing the WMDs. Joker's gang war meanwhile erupts through the streets of Gotham as Alfred reads Rorschach's journal, learning of the end that came for his world. As Batman is overcome by the soldiers, Ozymandias watches all of the news talking about the disappearance of the Justice League and how they fled to Mars, as Russia prepares to send heroes to America to arrest Superman. Batman is also in the news after the National Guard arrive in Gotham to arrest Batman for treason after his attack on American soldiers. Wonder Woman meanwhile deals with the Kandaki attack at the UN, but soon Black Adam proves too much for the princess as General Lane tells the president there are hundreds of metahumans gathered in Kandak, finding a safe haven there after the recent Superman theory controversy. With their nuclear defense systems down, they have no defense in place to deal with them, and on top of that, the Navy is watching for any signs of the Amazonians emerging from Themyscira. The Amazonians meanwhile know Diana will be seriously injured in her fights, and she will need aid, but they know retribution against Black Adam is not their way, and neither is saving the rest of the world. As Putin gives a deadline to the US to give up Superman, Lex and Lois return to his office. Lex said weeks ago he was approached by a man from another Earth and was shot by someone from that same Earth as well. He tells Lois about Ozymandias and what he did on his world and how it led to nuclear war, so he came to their world to find the one being who could save their world, Dr. Manhattan. Superman awakens in the Hall of Justice, calling for Lois as Perry and the other Daily Planet staff wonder what the hell is happening in the streets of Metropolis and where is Superman. The world begins falling apart with wars and natural disasters as the news calls for a hero to stop it all from falling apart. Ozymandias leaves his screens, going to see Saturn Girl, asking what she wants. Imra wants to know why she can't read his mind at all, while Lois meanwhile is taken to a high-tech vault that Lex says he has made to house the secrets of the very nature of their universe, all of which revolves around him. He talks about Carver Coleman, whom Lex has retrieved many of his things from over the past, like the photo of John. Lois wants to know what's so special about it, and Lex says that he's been tracking these strange anomalies since he was a boy, but the story behind the picture always eluded him. That is until 2 years ago when he tracked a coronal energy spike and it led him to a park where he saw Flash meeting and remembering Wally West's Kid Flash, learning of the warning of an alternate reality. The Flash wasn't the source of the energy, the picture on the ground was. Lex says that he also found many coronal debris around the area, some of which he sent to Lois, like the JSA film, but the photo was the true anomaly. Lex reveals that he has many more pictures, and each is exactly identical to the one he gave Lois. Thanks to the picture and John's suit in it, he can determine that someone is traveling through time, leaving these pictures as a sort of breadcrumb trail, and whomever is doing it isn't aware that they are doing it. Dr. Manhattan meanwhile arrives back on Earth as Superman dresses, confronted by some soldiers who demand him to come with them by order of the president. Superman doesn't want any trouble as Saturn Girl says Superman will stop Adrian, but Superman doesn't even know he exists. He knows Imra came to the past to warn Superman about something she doesn't fully understand as Superman races away from the soldiers. Saturn Girl says that Adrian will never destroy Superman, but he's counting on the Man of Steel surviving whatever happens. Alfred meanwhile makes up some pancakes, bagging them up and heading out into Gotham where Reggie sleeps, having a violent nightmare of his father's fiery death and how Rorschach is to blame. He awakens as Alfred arrives, saying that he read the journal and now he and Bruce believe him, and Bruce asked him to come find him. He offers the pancakes to the boy, but he hits them away, saying that they put him in prison and he is not Rorschach. Mime and Marionette meanwhile continue to kill their way through Gotham as Adrian says his original plan was to convince John to return home and fix their world, but he knew John wouldn't listen to him, so he decided to use Mime and Marionette, pulling their strings so to speak, to manipulate John before gathering the villains and breaking them out of prison with the help of Reggie before heading to the new Earth that John had been found on. Arriving on Earth Zero, Adrian realized John came somewhere special and horrifying, a world of extreme impossible, one full of hope and despair. Adrian says that the world was overrun with superpowers and costumes costumes, and Manhattan refused to help them because of his pending confrontation with Superman that would either destroy him or the universe. Adrian, however, knew why Manhattan came to Earth Zero though, to be with his own kind. This caused Adrian to come up with a new plan, one to save both worlds. To begin, he would turn the world against Superman by discovering the Superman theory, which was partially true, beginning with Firestorm, so he manipulated the facts and caused Firestorm to be perceived as a threat, ultimately having Superman defend him in Moscow, and with the help of Babastis, his cat, he framed Firestorm with the murder of thousands. He made sure the heroes knew Firestorm wasn't behind it quickly though, turning them onto Manhattan's trail, which resulted in the removal of all of Superman's metahuman allies as they went to Mars. As the president is rushed to a safe place, Black Adam and his metahumans arrive on the White House lawn, where he tells the watching metahumans to join him and free the world. Superman arrives and Adam warns him to stand down. Saturn Girl says that the future exists because of Superman, but Adrian asks that if Superman is so important to her existence, then why doesn't Superman remember her? Saturn Girl begins to suddenly turn to dust, told by Adrian that she is no longer part of this timeline, and she didn't realize it until now, and now that she has, she is being erased. Saturn Girl disappears, leaving only her Legion flight ring as Ozymandias leaves, telling Johnny Thunder to stop crying since he's from the past, and the past won't be erased. Superman is smashed through some houses as Manhattan knows Clark will see him in 5 seconds. Getting out of the rubble, Superman sees Dr. Manhattan in the street, and the two stare at one another as they know it is time. Dr. Manhattan realized that he was wrong about everything, and nothing lasts forever, as he relives his life with Janie, getting their picture taken at the fair and her watch being broken by a man. In the present, Superman approaches Manhattan, asking who he is, but as Manhattan tells him that he will be destroyed by Clark, or he will destroy everything, the heroes of Russia converge on Superman, wanting him to answer for the crimes against the Russian people. Black Adam, however, tells Posar to stand down, since Superman will answer for his crimes, but Karnak will be the one to do it, telling them to join his country. The Russians refuse as Manhattan watches this and much else unfold, as the two sides fight across the streets of Washington. Across the world, the many hero teams of the different nations assemble to protect their country's interests, as Superman continues to battle the Russian and Kandaki forces. While in Gotham, Reggie is assaulted by a racist shop owner who thinks the boy is trying to break into his shop. Suddenly, the man is stopped by Alfred, who knocks him out as Reggie tells him to leave him alone. Alfred, however, says that he needs his assistance, and so does Superman, since he's the only one who can tell them where to find Ozymandias, giving the boy the Rorschach mask back. However, when Alfred tries to tell him that he's read Walter's journal, Reggie refuses to hear Rorschach's name. He slams Alfred against the shop front, saying that his eyes are open now and he sees that the world is going to end, just like his did. Alfred says that it will unless someone saves it, while on the news, Superman is branded a war criminal by Iran, as Manhattan knows that there is no hope and all is lost and he cannot find it. Reggie says that every morning his father would wake him with a smile on his face, telling him that no matter what came his way, he was to make the most of it, and there was good in people, but you have to look for it, and never give in to the dark thoughts. But he knows that there are people who do, and who want others to suffer because of it, and those people are going to win, since the world is drowning in hate and anger now. Superman continues to fight the other heroes and villains as Lois watches the live news reports from Washington in horror. Soon, Batman arrives to meet Reggie and Alfred, saying that he tried to warn him and he's sorry that he didn't listen, but Reggie knows that it doesn't matter now. Manhattan watches the battle unfold and suddenly a car is flung at a mother and child hiding nearby, but Superman steps in to save them, shouting at Manhattan to do something, but he says that he doesn't help him since he's already seen it happen. Superman is blasted, falling to his knees as he says he cannot do this alone. Manhattan knows that in 4 minutes everything will end and remembers the same feeling he had way back in 1985 after Adrian delivered the alien squid to Earth, killing millions while he killed Walter Kovacs, becoming part of the lie that Adrian had manifested. Lex Meemaw tells Lois to leave and write her article and tell the world the history of it has been changed by forces beyond their universe, and he wants Lois to give him credit as he was the one who uncovered it. He retrieves a vibrational emitter weapon, planning on going to meet someone as Mime and Marionette continue their crime spree with the tied up comedian in the back seat. Batman meanwhile tells Reggie that he knows who John Osterman is, and because of that Reggie knows that that's that's why he can't put the mask on again, since his father never got through to Rorschach. Rorschach was in fact getting into his father's head, driving him insane. Batman says that he knows the boy sees a monster when looking at the mask, but he needs to take it and change it, making it into something else. Superman confronts Manhattan, demanding to know how he can just stand there. John tells him about how his world had a chance at peace, but he left it and it was destroyed and he can still see it burning. He tells Superman that he is behind the changes of the Man of Steel's life, the loss of mentors never known and friends he's forgotten, as well as the death of his parents. He tells Clark that he changed his life merely out of curiosity and wants to know if he will destroy him because of it, or will Manhattan defend himself despite his sins. Superman's eyes burn red and he rushes Manhattan, throwing a punch, but instead of hitting Manhattan, he hits Poser, who is trying to attack Manhattan from behind. Manhattan is confused as to why Superman would defend him, but Superman says that he doesn't know what to think about all this, but he knows right now he needs to make a choice. He tells John there might be a third option that he never saw, asking him about the woman in the photograph he saw on the ground, saying that Manhattan is creating them every time he takes a step, so he must find it important. Manhattan says that Janie was important, and Superman tells him that the darkness he sees takes everything he has to save the world, and he needs to make a choice now. Manhattan now understands, raising his hands and saying that everything ends. Manhattan's blue light engulfs the world, swallowing it all in a black void, and after a while a spark of light emerges as Kal-El's rocket speeds away from the destroyed Krypton, landing on Earth as the metaverse forms around the last son of Krypton. Later, Pa Kent tells a young Clark it's dangerous to show off his powers as he heads to his prom. In 1940, Alan Scott's lantern is moved out of his reach in a time of need, but Manhattan later moves it back, giving him the powers of the Green Lantern again. Clark leaves his parents for his prom, and as they drive home, the car is about to be smashed into by a truck, but Superboy arrives, saving the car, all because the Justice Society exists again. Therefore, Superboy does, after being inspired by them, and because of him now existing, so does the Legion of Superheroes. The metaverse catches up to the present, where Bubastis feels the changes as the Legion ring glows brightly and Johnny Thunder remembers becoming the Thunderbolt. Adrian rushes to the cells, finding that Johnny and the Legion ring are gone, as the future and the past are now free. Superman continues to be beaten by the heroes and villains until suddenly something pulls them off of him. Superman recognizes the woman who helped him as Saturn Girl, who along with the Legion of Superheroes and the Justice Society of America arrive back to help Superman. Johnny Thunder attacks Black Lightning as Dr. Manhattan sees the Man of Tomorrow, and for the first time he is inspired. Manhattan sees Superman reveal himself to Metropolis in 1937, and decades later, the Speed Force is born, and the metaverse rattles before it, shifting Superman's timeline forward, dividing realities and creating the multiverse, giving birth to Earth 2, which after a crisis of an infinite Earths is divided, with Earth 1 becoming the unexplored Earth 1985. Manhattan understands now why these worlds exist, since every time there is a change in the metaverse, the multiverse grows to preserve every era of Superman. He sees more crises with Flashpoint and then the Rebirth, which gives birth to Earth 52. He looks to the future, seeing in 1 year the old gods bombard Earth with energies, altering the metaverse yet again, and in 2025 a crisis called the Time Masters erupts, and again Superman is revitalized. Manhattan knows that no matter how much Superman's existence is attacked, he survives and is the North Star of the metaverse. In 2026, the timeline is restored and Earth 5G is born. And in 2026, Superman goes on a quest to find Bruce Wayne's lost daughter so she can save Bruce's son. 4 years later, the Secret Crisis begins, throwing Superman into a fight with Thor himself and a green behemoth stronger than even Doomsday, who dies protecting Superman from these invaders. Because of all this, Superman's timeline shifts forward again. He looks even further into the future, seeing Superman land on Earth in 2016, where the Kents and their child Colin Kent find the baby Kal-El. Again, the dates change to 2162, where the Kents and their child Clara find Kal-El again. No matter what happens, Manhattan knows that a rocket arrives, a child is loved, and a Superman is made. He knows Superman will show the people the way, and in a millennium, they will embrace the ways of Superman. Superman defends the people as Lois finishes up her article with help from Bruce Wayne, and Adrian believes that he has won again. Batman, however, confronts him with Rorschach, Rorschach, asking exactly what he did, since everything that cleared Superman's name was on his ship. Adrian says that he left it there for them, and this is all going according to his plan. There is a bright light as Adrian, Rorschach, mime, marionette, and comedian are teleported to the Washington Monument, met by Manhattan, who knows what Adrian has done. Adrian goes about explaining his plan, saying that they should all go home now since everybody lives today. Adrian is suddenly shot in the chest by Comedian, who is then blasted by the arriving Lex with his vibrational weapon, which sends him back to the world he came from at the exact moment Eddie falls from his window. Reggie tends to Adrian, who says that the kid finally got his revenge, but Reggie says that he doesn't want revenge, he wants justice, ripping the mask off and using it to cover Vight's wounds, saying that he will live and pay for his crimes and rot in prison. The terrified Adrian says that he's not Rorschach, and Reggie says that he isn't, since Rorschach is him. Erica meanwhile demands Manhattan give them back their child, but John says that they have a daughter on the way and they will see their son soon again, since he will need an anchor here in this world just like he did. Manhattan teleports away, meeting with Carver Coleman again, and apologizing not for explaining himself better, telling the man to not be afraid of what he feels. Because of this, Carver reveals to the world that he is gay, which causes him to be blackballed from the movie industry, until he makes a return in the 1960s, winning an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. In the 1970s, Carver became a spokesperson for getting homosexuality removed as a mental disorder in America, and in 2005 died in the care of his partner. In the present, Alan Scott leads an investigation into the so-called Superman theory as the people's heroes and the JLA begin a dialogue thanks to Superman. Clark and Lois meanwhile walk the streets of Metropolis, and Lois wonders why Clark is so quiet, but he's listening to the news. He knows there is a long road ahead of them, as Lex says that he can improve on Vight's ideas. Lois knows that Superman succeeded in reaching out to Manhattan and changing him, and he soon will change someone else, since if you have faith in that, then there's hope for everyone. Clark and Lois soon meet with Jonathan and Martha Kent, and Clark is happy to see his parents once again. Manhattan returns to his world in 1992, where he walks through the ashes of New York, but soon goes back through time, fixing Janie's watch before beginning to repair his destroyed world. Reggie meanwhile thanks the dead Byron Lewis for what he did for him, as a young girl obsessed with Ozymandias grows up to become the villain known as Nostalgia, along with her own Bubastis. Manhattan remembers hesitating when he tried to kill Erica Mason, knowing what her son was to become, since he will bring great happiness to a woman he cares for. However, he cannot see it thanks to his visions blurring through his experiments. He soon realizes that the blind spot he could see in the child's future is him, so he takes the boy from Erica soon after his birth, looking after the child, and soon it grows, wanting to make a wish on a shooting star over their heads. John's mind soon wanders back to what could have been if he didn't enter the IF chamber, seeing a world where he would marry Janie and they would have a daughter and son. He knows it's nice to daydream once in a while, as he gifts his powers to Mars and to the child, so the planet has its own protector. Elsewhere at the Hollis house, Laurie and Dan wonder if it really was Manhattan who fixed everything. There's suddenly a knock at the door and their daughter Sally goes to see who it is. Sally is met by a boy in a suit and a briefcase, who says that a friend of her mother and father brought him here, and he said that they would know what to do. Sally invites the boy in for some pancakes, learning that the boy, who bears Manhattan's symbol, is named Clark. Doomsday Clock is a stunning achievement of comic book events. Huge delays aside, Jeff Johns, Gary Frank, and his entire team of inkers, colorists, letterers, editors, and everyone in between did a fantastic job in telling a story that could have easily at any point have been totally cocked up. The entire story is a love letter to the DC Universe and to the Watchmen universe, respectfully using the characters Alan Moore created and even developing them further past what Moore originally set out for them to do. It's also a love letter to Superman, firmly stating the character's importance to comic books and to the DC universe at large, making him the crux of everything. The fallout of the event, both in and out of the comic universe, has me deeply excited for the coming years of the DC universe. I'm going to give Doomsday Clock a 10 out of 10.